Hey y'all,
Hey everyone, how's it going?
I'm Jay,
And I'm Chris the Bird Nerd.
and we
We
are
are
the
the
Bird
Bird
Brains.
Brains.
All
Yeah,
right, we've got
check it.
Einstein with us again,
Yeah. And I'm still
and
and I'm still stuck in a hotel.
Chris Chris is still in solitary confinement in the hotel.
Yes, all week long, unfortunately.
Oh, yikes. Well,
Yeah.
could be worse, could be me. This is fun. It's the reverse of normal. It's fun.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
so speaking of Einstein, um, we're going to talk about a parrot species today. We're not going to talk about eclecticus because I'm not qualified. Um,
Although I
and
love Einstein, he's freaking stud.
yeah, he's the man. He's my buddy. He's my buddy. It's kind of funny, I got him and then he almost immediately got that illness thing. I almost lost him.
Yeah.
And he's doing a lot better now. He's gained back a ton of weight and you can see he's molting. He doesn't look great right now, but he will at the end of this. And
Yeah.
we've really bonded. And it's kind of we went through like a trauma together. We kind of like I care more about him now than I did then. I
Yeah,
really
for
love
sure.
this. I really love him. He's really a buddy.
How old is he again, Jay?
He turned 8. His birthday's June 6th, so he turned 18 last month.
Nice.
So
So he's
he
he
can vote.
He, he's just a year up from Mikey. Mikey's 17 years old. I don't
Yeah.
know exactly the month he was born, but just based off of when my brother got him, he was roughly a year old, and his daughter was a year old, and now she's 16. So 17 years old for good old Mikey.
Yeah, I've actually got his birth certificate.
Oh, nice.
When I got him, I got like a very incomplete medical record, but it had a little form with his hatch date and stuff. And then he also got the vaccine for PTTB or something. I can't remember which one you can get the vaccine for, poliomyvirus or something. The parrot vaccine that
Uh-huh.
big parrots get, and it's got his hatch date on there too.
Nice. Very cool.
So I know his birthday,
Well, that's awesome.
um, which this year we did celebrate, just me and him. I just gave him some of his favorite treats, nothing crazy. And just like, hey, I don't know. He's pretty darn smart. He definitely like he knows we're talking about him right now. And that's why he's starting to poke me in the ear. Um, but so
He's just showing his good side.
I wonder if he knows what. Oh, now he's going to take it, and he's like, okay, fine. You don't play, I'll take a nap. But you want to go get on your perch, or you want to stay on camera? What do you want? But I don't know if he knows the concept of birthdays.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard. Like he definitely understands when he's getting talked about. He definitely understands like hi, hello, goodbye. Do you want a treat? Like he's got a pretty. I mean,
Yeah,
the same command of it as like a toddler. He definitely understands when I
yeah,
want him to go to the bathroom, things like that. But
yeah,
um, the concept of a birthday is kind of nebulous. That's kind of
yeah,
like the day that you were born, and then okay, well, what does being born mean?
yeah. I'm
I
sure
don't
he
know if I
just,
could explain that to my kids.
I'm sure he just thinks it's a good day, that he just gets a good treat from you. It's like that's probably. But they are smart birds. Like when I'm in the aviary, and especially if I have other people with me, I'll, Mikey will be sitting up on the perch inside the aviary, and he's usually preening himself or like hanging out. And the moment I say his name and you know, so and so's here to look at you. He perks up and looks down, like he knows his name. And like yesterday, I was telling you off camera that my wife and I were hanging out at the aviary. He flies over to the corner where the seat is and just sits there on the wire, like, hey, you gonna like acknowledge me? Like I'm right here, like come pay attention. That's when we gave him a bath with the water bottle. I think I posted that yesterday on Instagram for you guys to see. But
Mhm.
you know, he he loves the attention, and he knows when exactly what you said. He knows when he's being talked about and getting that attention towards him. So it's pretty cool.
Bandit will do that. My budgie, he'll come if I'm not paying enough attention to him. He'll come land on the net right in front of my face, and it's like, okay, all right, I get it. I'm
Yeah,
gonna say hi.
yeah.
But all right, so what kind of bird is Mikey?
So Mikey is a cockatiel, Australian cockatiel. And I think that was what we're going to speak about today on, just a quick episode on cockatiels, the care of cockatiels, maybe their lifespan. We've kind of talked about how old Mikey is, so that gives you a hint of, at least potential lifespan of a cockatiel, where they originate from, keeping them in a mixed aviary or together, breeding them. I think you've got, how many cockatiels do you have right now, Jay?
Right now I've got three. I've got a breeding
Nice.
pair and then a post-fledgling, really a young adult. And she just laid again, so hopefully soon more than that.
Nice. Very good.
And then Avery, the new one, the baby that's Latino, is going to my friend Michael.
That's
So
awesome. Two beautiful
staying in the
birds.
vicinity. She
I
really
love
is
her.
gorgeous. She is, I mean, just perfect. Like next to Latino in the dictionary is her sitting there looking around.
Yeah. My
Um,
dad, he used to have a lot of cockatiels, and Lu Lutinos and the white-faced cockatiels have always been my favorite. I think they're just beautiful birds. I mean, nothing against Mikey, I love him. He's your standard typical wild type, gray cockatiel. But yeah, the Lutinos, they are beautiful birds. I love the look of them.
yeah, and I again, I think we've talked about like gray bird or brown bird syndrome before. I think cockatiels are a victim of that. Sometimes I was
Yeah,
talking
for
to
sure.
a friend of mine who's a listener of the podcast. You know who you are. This maybe isn't the nicest thing to say, so I won't say their name. But they're talking about they were wanting a small parrot, and I recognize, by the way, that we're off of the topic of finches, but it's not just the Finch Brain podcast. It's the Bird Brains podcast. So
Yeah.
every once in a while, we'll go over to the hookbill side of life. But he said, I really want a parrot. And I said, well, they are a parrot, like by the most basic definition, right? You got the hook bill, you got
Yeah.
two toes forward, two toes back, climbing,
Yep.
I said, yeah, but they don't really look, they're not colorful. It's like, all right, well, you know, um, that being said, I mean, I've got right now, I've got a white faced pearl, whose name is Pearl. They're technically my
Yeah.
daughters. And then her mate is Kristoff. These are all Disney names. Um, and he is a pearl pied, but males as they get older lose the pearling. So
Okay.
he definitely has some pied on his wings, some white and stuff, but as a general rule, he looks pretty close to your average wild type. And then
Yeah.
they've produced for me albinos and Latinos.
That's so cool.
And I'm hoping eventually I'll get some white faced pearls as well.
That'd be
Um,
awesome.
but my very first bird that got me somewhere down the line to this crazy thing, I got 117 birds right now, unless more hatch today. That,
Which is a possibility.
which is, yeah, very real possibility, is he was a cockatiel named Chips, named after the TV show with Eric Estrada and
Nice. Yep.
can't remember the Larry something is the other Larry Williams maybe is the other guy's name.
Yeah.
Um, so the 1970s cop show that I was a big fan of as a kid. So and my mom had them growing up. I got a lot of love for cockatiels. I think I don't necessarily want to call them an underrated bird because they're very popular,
They are very
but
popular.
they almost are still underrated
Yeah.
despite the popularity.
I feel like their potential is underrated. And
That's right. That's a good
and
way to say
and
it.
and I think where I go with that is they're a great bird to have. They they don't have quite as much of a demand as like Einstein does. They're hardy birds. I wouldn't necessarily, even though I have Mikey as part of my mixed aviary, I would not recommend mixing them with other smaller birds. They can be, I call Mikey like my grumpy grandpa, my grumpy old man, and he's grumpy, but he actually is a very mellow personality and doesn't, attack the birds or anything like that. But there are cockatiels that have done that in the past, so I wouldn't put them with smaller finches. Um, but the amount of they can grow, the bonds that they create with their owners just as strong as any parrot out there. In fact, it's almost better because the cockatiels uh, don't necessarily just bond to one person. So, like, I'm Mikey's favorite person, but he'll still go to anyone in my family, right? He may pay a little bit more attention to me, but anybody can hold him. Uh, Random people that come to my house, I pull them out of the aviary, they hold them, you know. So cockatiels are great for that. He whistles. He whistles the Andy Griffith song. He whistles If You're Happy and You Know It. He blows kisses. He says good bird, pretty bird, so they can talk. So they have all the capabilities of the big, beautiful, colorful parrots, uh, but a smaller bird, not as messy, not as loud, and they do have the gray syndrome, at least your wild type cockatiels, but their potential totally is underrated. I You could have this exact same amount of a bond and connection with a cockatiel as you could say a macaw, right? With half the package size, but the same amount of personality and traits and tricks and skills and abilities as your larger parrots have.
Yeah, I think, um, and by the time this comes out, the budgie episode will have come out. I think it's kind of another bird in that category of relatively affordable, really
Yeah,
common, and so
yeah,
kind of overlooked for what it is. They are really, really personable, really, really smart, genuinely like entertaining. They are goofy.
yeah,
They're goofy.
yeah, yeah, they are.
And I think they have almost the care requirements of finches,
Yep.
and then kind of the personality of a bigger
Yes.
parrot. So certainly a bird that, and I hate the idea of like a starter bird, but certainly a bird, if I had a novice come to me and say, I'm thinking about parrots,
Yeah.
certainly would be close to, if not the top of my list for this is a bird you should consider getting.
Absolutely. Yeah, their care is easier. They're easy to tame down. If you're just wanting a bird to breed, right? You have breeder cockatiels. They're easy to breed. I would hands down say that would probably be my top bird that I would recommend
Mhm.
as a starter to get you in the groove and get things going. Really, overall, they're a great bird to have and to start with, and so that would be my recommendation as well.
Yeah, I'm confident. Maybe not up in like the upper Midwest or like upper West. Like I don't know about in like North and South Dakota, right? But any state with a big city, you can find hand-fed baby cockatiels there.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
yeah,
If not one, then 100. Um,
yeah.
Caging requirements are not super intense, and uh, as far as diet, seeds, like a good cockatiel mix, fresh fruits and veggies,
Yep.
and I mean that's really about it. Clean water.
Yeah. Clean water. They are. I would say they're kind of a heavier. So they originate. They're part of the cockatoo family, right? They're the
Mhm.
smallest of the cockatoo families. They still
Hence
have
the
the little
crest. Yep.
crest that comes up. They are for as small as they are. They're a heavier bird. So they are a little bit heavier of a flyer, which kind of makes them a little, I wouldn't say clumsy. They're not clumsy flyers. But I mean, when they fly, you can hear the flaps of their wings and they go. And so, if you have a flighted cockatiel, I would recommend a bigger aviary because it does take that extra effort for them to fly around. They're not like your parakeets or like the borks. Borks are a little bit smaller than a cockatiel, but they're nice, swift, quick flyers.
Hmm.
Whereas your cockatiels are a little bit more of a heavier, loud flyer, and so the bigger space for the flighted cockatiels is better. If you have it inside and it's hand tame and things like that, then keep it out of the cage and it can. If you have it flight trained, that's fine, and you can have it fly around your house and stuff like that. But if you've got a breeder cockatiel that's not tame, a bigger cage is better, especially if you have multiple cockatiels in there together. And they are social birds, so I would absolutely recommend keeping multiple cockatiels together if you have them, or them with other hookbills of similar size. I don't have a mate for Mikey. He's wanted one for a long time, but because I have a mixed aviary, I have never gotten another one. So he's actually bonded with a couple of my Borks, and he goes through all the same mating rituals and helps them sit on the eggs. Like, he's like become a father for them, and they've kind of like accepted this little triad with him a part of it, and he does a good job. But they are social birds, so if you're only going to have one as a pet in your house, you are the one that's got to socialize with it and play with it every day and keep it company, because they do thrive on that. They're very social, and they do rely on it. Not as much as like a cockatoo. If you don't give them interactions,
They go crazy.
for a day, they go crazy and start plucking their feathers. I don't think they're to that extent, but it is very healthy for the birds to either give them another cockatiel to be with or another bird, or you provide that entertainment on a daily basis to help them feel that social satisfaction. So,
And it doesn't mean a mirror. It
right,
might mean a
yes.
small DVD player or TV. Yeah, I mean, um, so I've got my breeding pair, and they are in with some other birds, but their cage is 5 feet tall, 3 feet deep, and 8 feet long. And I would say even that they do fly in there, but only when they really feel like it. They do spend
Yeah,
more time crawling around than they do,
yeah,
or climbing
yeah,
around than they do flying around. And I think you're right about that. I think the analogy is probably like, so like if your finch is a fighter plane, your cockatiels are like a big cargo plane. Like
yeah, yes.
they
Uh-huh.
fly heavy. They're not
Yep.
super agile. They're not, I agree,
Yes.
not clumsy, but they're not doing tight turns.
Yeah. Yep.
But
And yeah, and Mikey's been in a small cage for before he came to me, he was in a smaller cage, and these last several years being in the aviary, it took him a little while. Like he would naturally go to just climbing on the wires, and he has had his wings clipped in the past. Now he's probably on like year 5 of not having his wings clipped, and he's just this last year finally like trusting his ability and flying back and forth in the big aviary. But even then, he's got a good space to do that. But even then, I mean, you can hear those heavy wings,
yeah,
and he
boom, boom, boom,
plops
boom,
down
boom.
into the window when he's coming back in from the aviary, and it scares all the birds, even though they're used to him. He's just because it's big and heavy. And so it's, yeah, give him as much space as you possibly can.
So let's talk a little bit about the downsides of cockatiels. So one big one that comes to mind for me quickly is they're dusty. They're a very dusty bird,
Yes, very
uh,
dusty.
which which makes sense because in the wild, I think Einstein might need to go potty. Einstein's potty trained, everyone. Fun fact. So we'll let him get up on his perch, and let me see if I'm right. Yep, right away. So
Not a boy.
good bird. That's a good bird. So um, they live in the Australian outback, water a little bit fewer and farther between. So those a lot of your birds in that kind of grassland outback situation have evolved to be dustier. It's mite control,
Yep.
helps keep their feathers in good condition if they can't bathe all the time. So um, if you keep cockatiels in a room, you're going to get a lot of feather dander in that
Yes.
room.
And
For
dust
that,
standards. Yep. Hmm.
yeah, for that reason, I have an air purifier that runs right underneath my cockatiel cage. And
Nice.
that doesn't solve it, but it cuts down on it. So it's something to consider. Um, Another
And
thing,
and with that, Jay, you'd mentioned the baths. Provide bath water. Cockatiels love to take baths, and if they have that opportunity, Mikey doesn't necessarily go down into my bird baths and take a bath,
yeah,
but anytime I bring a spray bottle out, like I just posted earlier on my Instagram channel, you spray him with the water. Like if he sees the water bottle in my hand, he's to the wire and he's already like opening his wings, like spray me, like get me wet. So baths are not only beneficial and healthy for them to keep that dander under control and keep their feathers healthy, but it's also an enrichment activity for them. Most cockatiels enjoy them.
right, yeah. There's a they are. I'm trying to think of some other cons. I mean, they are somewhat louder than a finch, but they're really not that loud. The only other
No.
con I can really think of is they can bite. They
Yep.
are the first bird on the list, size wise, in my mind. Kind of them and conures. I guess lovebirds are dangerous with other birds, but as a general rule, they're the first birds that like they can get a human pretty good, and they can get
Uh-huh.
another bird really really good.
Yep.
So
I've had blood drawn many times from a cockatiel bite throughout my
yeah,
life.
same. And I've had them hurt other birds before. So
Yes.
um, when you talk about mixed aviaries, and we have a whole episode you can refer back to for that. I can even tell you which one that would be here in a second. But the episode 7. So they space is king. So if you're gonna keep two cockatiels together, good sized cage should be okay. If you want to keep, like for instance, I do in my cockatiel cage, I also have a pair of budgies. So I have the
Hmm.
cockatiels, pair of budgies, pair of canaries, trio of weavers, and a pair of doves. If my cage was much smaller than it, even frankly, probably just a little bit smaller than it is, and I hadn't really watched all these birds, didn't know all these birds well, and didn't observe them well, that could be a real problem. Um,
Yeah.
so a big key to that, and like you said, you've got Mikey in your aviary, but he doesn't have a mate, and you didn't really elaborate on that, but I know the reason he doesn't have a mate, you don't really trust another cockatiel,
Yes.
right? Mikey's special.
Yes.
And we talked about that in other episodes. It always comes down to the individual bird. Um, like Einstein, I don't know really how he would do with other birds. He doesn't interact much with my other birds, and I get the impression that I'm not sure he does care. I think he watches them a lot. I think it's kind of like watching a soap opera for him. But I would be concerned about him hurting another bird, not necessarily
Yeah.
just because he's trying to, but even him giving you a little, hey, get away from me. The average finch weighs, 9 to 12 grams or something like that. Well, Einstein weighs
Yeah.
300.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of like Andre the Giant versus your 2 year old, even if he bumps them by accident, going to break their leg,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah. Well, I don't know what it is. It seems like finches in general just like annoy Mikey or cockatiels. But if you get a hookbill, so parakeet, lovebird, bork, uh, for some reason that interaction is different and he wants to interact with them. Whereas like the finch, yeah, it's just like that annoying little 2-year-old and he's like, get away from me. Don't be on the same perch with me. But the aviary is big enough and the birds know,
yeah, they've
you know,
learned.
if
Yeah.
if if he's next to him, they don't perch next to him, you know. He has never like attacked a bird and like hurt it. Um, but I do know I actually have like my little nephew. He's got a cockatiel and he has a parakeet in the same cage, and they've bonded. I've got a niece. She has a cockatiel and they have a lovebird in the same cage and they've bonded. So I think they can still be friendly and bond with other species of birds. But for some reason, it seems like the finches, they just, it's almost like cat and dog scenario. They just don't like them.
They just don't
Where
jive. Yeah.
yeah, whereas, your other hookbills, parakeets and up, budgegear parakeets and up, they if that's their only option, I think they have a better time and they want to bond with them and they can actually form really close, like genuine friendships, where they're preening each other and they want to be next to each other at all times, things like that. So there are other options out there, and it doesn't have to just be, a pair of cockatiels. Um, or nothing. But so I think there's some options out there that you can explore. But get to know your bird, get to know their personality, watch them, and be observant. And if it's something that you think will work, and they show behaviors that it will work, then try it. And if not, and they just don't like it, then don't push the envelope because usually that's when it will end up with a bird getting injured.
I thought Einstein was going to be done for the night, but he's over there wing begging to come back. So, all right. He likes he likes the spotlight. So, um, yeah, I mean, they really are great. I mean, the pros list way outweighs the cons, right? So they're
For
pretty
sure.
easy to take care of. They're not super expensive. Their caging requirements aren't insane. They're not crazy loud.
Easy to breed.
Yeah, easy to breed, really smart, can talk, can
Yeah.
sing, can whistle. Um, and there's a lot of fun. I have a lot of funny stories about them. So, for instance, my grandparents, my mom had a cockatiel. She went off to college. My grandparents have this cockatiel while she's away at school. They decide to sell their house to live on a boat for a year. So, okay, where are we going to put the cockatiel? So they ended up hanging the cockatiel in a cage in the head because their boat wasn't that big. So in the bathroom. So my poor grandfather, every time he went to go number one, he had to duck down because there wasn't room for him to stand up in the bathroom. With, not a problem for the ladies, so they didn't care, and he loved animals, so it all worked out. But they are adaptable, really
Yeah.
hardy. They really don't have many health problems. Let's talk about breeding them a little bit, I guess. So we've never really talked about this, Chris. Have you ever bred them?
I have, yes. But it's been many years. So growing up, my dad had cockatiels. So it was like zebra finches, budgie-ear parakeets, lovebirds, and cockatiels. Those were like his main species that we focused on and had basically my whole childhood. And then as I got into my teenage years, he bought me a Lutino male and a white-faced female, and I had them and bred them. And then after I got married, I had another pair of cockatiels, not Mikey, and bred them. I only had them for about a year and a half, and then ended up selling them because I got more into the finches and wanted to work with the finch group. So I have bred them in the past, um, but it's been a while. How about you? I mean, I know you've had some pretty good success this last year, Jay, with your pair of cockatiels.
I don't know of good success. I mean, I have, so yes, I have successfully bred cockatiels. I'd like to see them do better. My pair's pretty inexperienced, actually. So this is really their first year breeding.
Yeah,
Um, and it's also they're both first timers, which is
yeah,
really not ideal, especially with parrots I'm
yes,
not saying finches are dumb, but parrots are definitely smarter.
yeah,
And so they really can learn. And so, but I've also found that it, maybe it's the size disparity because when a cockatiel hatches, it's really not much bigger than a finch chick. They just grow faster.
yeah,
So maybe so inexperienced, whatever it is, it sometimes takes them a couple clutches to get going. And with most parrots, I find that tends to be the case. And it
yeah.
is with my teals now. Um, but yeah, I mean, so
Well,
you provide a cockatiel nesting box, right, with wood shavings in it, make them comfortable. I do feed them egg food and
mhm.
then their seed mix, and kind of they handle the rest. And I mean, I've got video of them mating up on my Instagram, very graphic that
Nice.
you can see if you so choose.
The
Um,
Javiary X-rated version.
yeah, the JV at night, right? Um, but they definitely get down to business. They're definitely bonded. It's very, very normal. I went in there today multiple times, and they're either, if you only see one, it's not because they're on opposite sides of the cage. It's because one of them's on eggs, sitting on eggs, and the other one is not, or they're
Yeah,
together. And they rotate, which some species don't, and a lot of parrot species don't at all. Like budgies don't do this at all. Vorks don't do this at all, but cockatiels actually rotate which one of the pair is sitting,
yeah,
which
yep,
I think is really cool. It's kind of, to me, it's a little more, it's closer to human, right? It's like
for
we don't
sure, 100%.
just one take care. So they actually alternate who sits and who comes out. Um, and
Which
I
in
like
the
breeding them.
wild, Jay, in the wild, that's one of the reasons why the male in this case isn't that much prettier than the female. Whereas in the wild, most of your birds, your males are elaborate, colorful, very beautiful, and your females are a very dull color, usually to blend into to their
Camouflage.
surroundings, camouflage, right? And that's pretty common throughout most of the bird world, not in all cases, but for your cockatiels and your zebra finches, where both male and female share the incubation. Oh, by getting some balloons, sweet. Share the incubation, the this thinks it's pretty exciting.
I,
They're
I was trying to figure out how
similar
you
in
set that off.
colors.
I can't do
I
it.
don't know. It's like
Yeah. Huh?
similar in colors, you know. So I think that's pretty cool, something to take note of there. And also, I wanted to say, Jay, your parrots live longer, right? So you've got your finches, their lifespan, a healthy finch is 5 to 8 years,
Yeah, if you
average
really
lifespan.
crush it, yeah, it's 7, 8, 9, but I would even say lower than that in reality.
Your your cockatiels, their lifespan is like healthy lifspan is 16 to like 22 years in captivity, right? So
Yeah,
your
I
cockatiels,
see up to 25, but when I say my
I
piece,
have
I'll talk
seen,
more
yeah,
about it.
like yeah, you're average, like Mikey's 17, and I feel like he's still got some spunk to him. Like he's still a healthy bird. He hasn't shown very many signs of slowing down, but it takes longer for your parrots to progress, right? So it takes longer for them to become sexually mature. It takes longer for them to learn how to become parents, right? So you got a 2, 3 year old cockatiel that's breeding for the first time. It's going to be a learning curve for it, and it's going to take some time for them and probably several clutches for them to learn how to become a parent. Whereas like a finch by 3 years of age, they probably have already had
They're back on the
10
back end.
clutches, and yeah, and they're experts at it, right? So everything's just sped up. So I would say patience with them, understanding that the bigger the bird, the longer the process is, the longer they become sexually mature, the longer it takes for them to truly become great parents. But you also have many more years for them to try at raising clutches and being a parent. Whereas your finches, it's a pretty condensed lifespan, and so they have to learn quicker and do it faster.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the um so we always talk, and we've talked about this before. So you take the hypothetical lifespan, which I think cockatiels is pretty generally accepted to be about 25 years. That's perfect genetics, right? Which is a huge component that you, as the bird owner, have no control over. Oh, I did get a thumbs up. And then, uh, so if you had perfect genetics, a perfect diet, perfect life experiences, right? So they didn't get sick, or they didn't get an injury, or they didn't get exposed to any kind of fumes. Uh, all those things, which are pretty impossible,
Yeah,
then you can get a bird at 25 years.
yeah,
I'd say if you count accidents and mishaps and rookie mistakes and everything, probably the average lifespan of cockatiel is like 3 years.
yeah.
I think even for experienced breeders, I'm expecting my cockatiels to get into where Mikey is now, 15, 17, 18, 20. Over 20, I'd be really surprised.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, I'm doing my absolute best. I'm feeding the right diet. I'm doing all the extra stuff. I'm also breeding, which is wear
Yeah.
and tear on the birds.
Yep. Especially on
Um,
your females.
right. So, I and I also say like that if you when people go through the calculus in their head of like, so Einstein hypothetically could live to be 65. So was there a part of me that I got him? I guess I just turned 34 when I got him. He was 17 at the time. There's a part of me that said, okay, is it possible that I'm going to have him for 40 more years and we're going to die
Yeah.
at the same time? It's possible. Frankly, I hope it to be the case. I really
Yeah.
like this guy. That being said, I knew that I could have him for the foreseeable future, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the next several years at least, and you never really know, right? I mean, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. I could lose my job, my house could burn down, and my insurance could all cancel at the same time, and I'd be homeless, right? Who knows?
Right.
So don't let, I'm not saying just get a bird on a whim that you're only going to have for 6 months, but you don't need to be able to lock in the full 25 years to commit to a
Right.
cockatiel. A
Right.
couple of years, the foreseeable future. And if you run a situation where, okay, I can't keep this bird anymore, especially if you've done everything right, you've treated the bird well, the bird then has a good situation, good health, good manners, it's very easy to find someone to
Absolutely.
and Mikey is a great example, right? How many? So your
Yep.
brothers, two of your brothers have had Mikey?
Yeah, so Craig, who's been on the podcast, he's the first one who bought Mikey. He bought him when he was a year old,
Hmm.
and from a breeder who had hand raised him. And then he had Mikey for about 5 years, and then they ended up getting a new job, moved out of state, was in a rental that didn't allow any pets, and so he ended up giving Mikey to my other brother, Bob, who also has birds. And Bob had him for about 3.5 years, and he probably would still have him now, but I convinced him to give him to me because I wanted that companion bird. Like I honestly I missed that. I had a green cheek conure for many years at the first of my marriage. He died with a rookie mistake, and it had been several years, and I missed that. And so I actually talked my brother into letting me take him. And I've got little kids that love them and play with them a whole bunch and stuff like that. And so now I'm basically his third owner, fourth owner if you count the breeder that hand raised him, and expect to have him till he dies.
And like 17th owner if you count your brother's wives and their kids
Yeah,
and
I know,
everything
right?
else. So there
Really.
there is something to be said for a people bird, right? I'm a finch
Yeah.
guy at heart. They're not really people birds. I mean, people hand
No.
feed them and all
No.
these things, but they're a
Yeah.
flock bird anyway. So even amongst themselves, they're not really. I mean, they pair bond, but it's
Right.
not like this.
Yeah.
It's not
It's
like my buddy here.
it's so cool to be able to, and I do keep Mikey out in the aviary, and so he lives the aviary life, but he's been around humans enough and has built a strong enough connection that I haven't really lost that connection with him. I still go out every morning. He jumps on my shoulder. He helps me feed the birds. I play with them. I go to work. I usually come at home and check on the birds when I get home, say hi to them. Usually we'll hold them, do some kisses, sing some songs, go in the house. But there's something about that human connection that you can build with these birds, and it's special. I mean, that it's really satisfying for me, and I enjoy having him around, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to have him. So if you guys have that opportunity, I'd love for you to take it. I'd love for you to experience that. I also would say, Jay, life happens, things come up, and you have life changing events where you have to move, or things come up, or you got kids that are allergic to animals, whatever it is. Don't make the birds suffer by keeping them in unfavorable environments or situations. Address the situation. If things need to change, I would much rather you rehome that bird in a better situation than continue to drag it out and they stay in the cage for the rest of their lives. So make that decision as well. Stuff happens and it's okay. Just make sure the bird's going to a better home than it was in before. So
Absolutely, part of being a good steward of the animal, right? No, I mean
yeah,
um, they are a gift. They are a gift, and I really enjoy. I mean, I can't. I'm realizing how much I love cockatiels in this episode, but if you're looking for a bird that won't break the bank, can still live in an apartment, but you want a bird that wants to come and snuggle and be your buddy and be goofy and dance and
yeah,
sing with you in the shower, l-
yes,
give cockatiels a very serious look. I mean, amongst the, I guess, the small parrots, I mean, I love budgies too, but you really can't go wrong with either of those two
you,
species. And I put them ahead
you really can't.
personally I'd put them ahead of lovebirds, parrotlets, and conures,
Yep,
which are kind of the other
absolutely.
three in
Yep.
that genre.
And yeah, and those birds tend to have more feisty personalities where, one day they're loving you, the next day they're kind of nippy. I had that with my green cheek conure. One day, I mean, he's like Einstein right there, and he's snuggling into me, and the next day he's like, "Don't touch me. I don't really want you to hold me today." you know.
Right.
Um, Whereas a cockatiel, it's pretty level and consistent, their personalities, and they usually want you more than they don't.
Yeah.
When they've created that bond with you. And, you've got to create that bond first. I'm not saying that you can go to any cockatiel and they're just going to love you. You got to create the bond. That's a part of, you know, animal
Any
bonding, keeping,
real
it's
relationship.
the process. Yeah, it's a real relationship. And once you've established that, more times than not, they want to continue that and they want more of it
Hmm.
every day.
Just like with your person, in my case, like my wife, right? Girl, friend, girlfriend, fiance, wife. It takes
Right?
time, and I
Yeah.
mean, I'm now 9 months into Einstein, and we weren't like this 9 months ago. It took a lot.
Yeah.
And I talked about at the beginning of the episode. We went through some scares together, and I'm driving above the speed limit across the bay to get him to the avian vet to get him antibiotics, and he's probably like, "Who the hell is this guy? And why don't I feel good?" And
Yeah.
but and then we're going through. We were talking about it before we started filming. Giving him medicine every day, and he's grabbing the syringe out of your hand and throwing it across the room because he doesn't like the taste.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we've gone from all of that to this, but you put in the effort and treat them how you'd want to be treated, right? They
Yeah.
know. They're really smart and
Yeah.
they know. And if you put in the time and the effort and the love and affection,
Yeah.
they will love you
And
back.
and I will say this, Eclectus parrots, they're not famous for the lovey-dovey that you're seeing right now with Einstein and Jay. They're more of a, I'm going to sit on your shoulder and I'm going to enjoy life, but maybe not necessarily cuddle up with you. Whereas like a cockatiel, they want that cuddle session.
Yeah,
They are always lowering the head, fluffing their feathers for you to pet them, always, constantly. The Eclectus parrots, I think Jay's got a special relationship with Einstein. That's not always the case with them. I think they're a little bit more reserved bird, but it's pretty cool to see the bond that you've created with Einstein and what you guys can do together. So
they are more reserved, and they're definitely, especially around like strangers. And I mean, Einstein. He goes to my daughter's class every year. My son, my 2-year-old's now probably old enough for him to come in. So he's more of a therapy bird sometimes than he wants to be. But he's just, I'm lucky. I would give more credit to Einstein than I would to me for this relationship, to be honest. He's
yeah,
just a wonderful bird. But I
yeah,
mean, Mikey, the same way, right? Like, if you find the right bird and you put the time in, you will have a wonderful bird.
yep, for
But
sure,
it's not
100%,
overnight, but it's it's worth it, right? You plant the seed and you get the beautiful plant out of it.
absolutely. I love it, man.
All right, well, that is Cockatiels. We are here for questions, concerns, comments, thoughts, mild objections, constructive criticism. Where can they
All the
find
above.
you? Where can they find you, Chris, if they want to talk to you?
Yeah, please reach out to me. Bird Nerd on YouTube and Facebook. Bird Nerd 4 on Instagram. I just posted, by the time you see this video, it'll be probably about a week old. Video of me and Mikey hanging out, taking baths, and him chilling on my shoulder. So I love Mike. If I wasn't in a hotel, I'd be doing what Jay's doing right now and have him on my shoulder so that you guys could see, the bond that we've created together. And he'd probably have my whole shoulder full of dander, feather dander, because they literally have so much. But that's also something that I've grown to enjoy. So, but yeah, reach out to me. I'd love to hear you guys' story, answers questions, and continue to share my knowledge as much as I can. How about you, Jay? How can they get a hold of you?
I am the Javiary, Jayviary, or the underscore Javiary. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, which sucks, YouTube, obviously, and then Reddit as well. And here to answer any questions you might have. May have some cockatiels available later this year. Definitely have some other birds available, so don't hesitate. Chris does too. We
Yeah.
both ship, so don't hesitate to reach out whether you're looking for a bird or a question or a friend. We're here for all of that.
Yes, please.
All right. Well, I think that'll be it for cockatiels. We'll catch you all in the next one.
Awesome. We'll see you guys.